Hey everyone, this is Mike. Today we're going to be talking about Temtem, which is a game that is coming out in early access later this month on the 21st of January. Yesterday, the first stress test for the servers concluded, which I was lucky enough to get a key from a friend of mine, so I was able to go and test it out. Now, for the stress test itself, it was of course a stress test to see if the servers could handle it. Spoiler alert, they didn't, so the stress test itself was pretty bad when it first started out, it was pretty unplayable even. But then towards the end of the stress test, which was about a good 3 hours later, it was pretty stable to play, so it does give me good hope for when the game finally does release, as there is another stress test planned in about, I think it's 4 or 5 days. So pretty interested to see how that will all pan out. I'll probably be hopping into that stress test as well to see how much has improved, and if it has improved enough to my liking, then I'm definitely going to be buying into the early access. So, what is this game all about? Basically, it is a combination of Pokemon and an MMORPG. If you just say those two things, you should basically know what you're getting yourself into. The combat is relatively simple. If you've played Pokemon before, this will all feel very similar to what you're used to from a Pokemon game. You're always fighting 2-on-2 battles, so it's not just 1-on-1 like you usually have in Pokemon, but it is 2-on-2. This is also because they want to focus on synergies between the different Temtem that are out in the world, and also because they want to have some sort of a competitive PvP scene as well, where you can choose 10 different Temtem and then you have a pick and a ban phase, so that you can kind of have a little bit more of a competitive PvP experience. I think it's really interesting to see all of these synergies and what they will be able to come up with. Like, for example, one Temtem will be the buffer debuffer, while your other one will be like a DPS. Maybe you'll have something like a synergy with where one Temtem will poison the enemy and then the other one will deal bonus damage to a poisoned enemy. I'm just giving like examples of what could be. I'm not entirely sure, of course, if those things will actually be there, but it is something that is very plausible in my opinion. Now, because it is still an MMO, you're going to be having your main story with your main quests. You also have a bunch of side quests that you can undertake as well. Of course, you just have your map where you have those different quest icons that you can go towards. So it feels literally like playing an MMO set in a Pokemon world, which I think is really fun because I've always been a long-time Pokemon fan, going back all the way to when I was like 5-6 years old when I got my first Game Boy Advance or whatever it was. Or no, it was a Game Boy Color back then. So I've been a long-time Pokemon fan, haven't really been playing it much the last few years. Because I've been playing a lot of other games, mainly online games. So now finally being able to play a Pokemon style game online with my friends together, not just to fight against each other here or there in PvP, but also just play alongside them through the story and through the world, seems like really fun to me. So of course you do have your normal story campaign. It is an online world, so you're able to play solo or with other people. It is a co-op adventure, so you'll be able to play together with your friends towards the next goal, catch new Temtem, complete the route, any other thing like that. There will also be housing when the game comes out, so you can kind of customize your own place in the world. And then you have the competitive PvP that I talked about as well. So those are kind of like the features that they aim to have for the game itself. Now, for the world, there are 6 different big islands, I guess you could say, which are called the Archipelago, and those will basically look very different from one another, so that you can go and find your different Temtem there. As with Pokemon games, there is also a big villain. They're called the Belsoto clan, if I'm not mistaken. It's basically your Team Rocket, Team Magma, whatever you're used to from Pokemon. Basically, the bad guys that want to take over the world of the Temtem. So we've got those as well. Now, for the game itself, of course, we don't know exactly what will be available in the early access just yet. I haven't been able to have a very big chance to play much last night because there were so many server issues towards the start of the stress test. It was mainly just me trying some stuff, trying to walk around, but every time I interacted with an NPC or I fought against a Temtem in the wild while I was running through some grass, it would basically crash my game and I would have to start again. Not start again, but at least have to restart the game to get back to where I was, and it was really annoying, so I didn't really play all that much until about like the last hour or so of the stress test, which is where I got the most playtime in, but it was mainly just questing around in the first real town that you come across. So for right now, I don't really have too much to say of opinions on the game, as there was very little playtime that I was able to put in, but of course next week, or I think it's like 4 or 5 days as I said, we will have another stress test. Hopefully with the key that I had, I can take part in that second stress test as well. See what changed, maybe get some more playtime in, get a little bit further into the story, catch some new Temtem, fight some more battles, that kind of stuff. And then I'll probably have a much better opinion to see whether or not I do want to buy into that early access, because what was there so far, when it was working, was really fun to play. Combat feels alright. Combat is also really cool because it's not just your normal turn-based combat, it is functioning on a speed system, so both of the players take their turn at the same time, but depending on the speed of both your Temtem as well as the attack that you're using, you're going to be going first, second, third or fourth in the turn, which I think is really cool because it adds that extra layer of strategy on top where you want to be using Temtem that might be faster and then maybe abuse the fast moves that they have as well to make sure you go first to land those debuffs, those buffs on your team member, or to just finish off another opponent before they're able to make their own move. So I think that's really cool. I'm really looking forward to that. Of course, it is an MMO, so you do have those tropes of main stories, like main story quests, side quests, that kind of stuff. So it is still very much an MMO, but it does have that Pokemon theme layered on top of it, which I think is really interesting because it doesn't play like your normal MMO where you're leveling up your character, because you are playing with those Temtem instead and you're leveling those up. So I'm not quite sure how the questing will affect all of that, of course, because usually with questing you get items or new features or experience and such, whereas right now I'm not quite sure what we can expect from that, whether it's just to progress through the story or learn more about the world, or maybe get some nice side items as well, like for example consumables or extra gold and such to spend to buy those Temporiums, I believe they're called, which are basically your Pokeballs or other consumables like healing potions, stamina potions and the likes. So for now, that's pretty much all I wanted to talk about. I don't have a crazy amount of information, as I said, because I was only able to play for a good hour before the server shut down, because the stress test was very brief. I think it lasted for about 4 hours. And the first 2 were completely unplayable. The third hour I was also playing some Monster Hunter on the side until the servers were a bit more stable. But if this is a sign to come, if they can already improve the server stability by so much in just 4 hours, I'm really interested to see how stable it will be for the second stress test, and then we'll see whether or not I am going to be playing the early access as well, which I might make another video on the game when the next stress test concludes. I'm not entirely sure. If it is stable enough, I might stream it a bit as well, because I wanted to stream this stress test, but because it was so unstable I decided against it, because it would be very frustrating, not only for me to play, but also for people to watch, because you're going to be looking at a black screen for the most part. So if next stress test is stable enough, you'll see another video on this. If it is stable enough as well during and I'm playing it, I might stream some as well, but we'll wait and see for that. For now, this is Temtem, a little bit of a sneak peek to it. You might expect some more content on it if the second stress test is successful, and then maybe when it comes out in early access you might see me play it quite a bit as well. So that's gonna be it for me. This is Temtem, and I'll see you in the next one.